The one thing Claire Bennett remembered most clearly about her wedding day was not the music, the flowers, or even the way Daniel looked at her when she walked down the aisle. It was the front row, 2 empty chairs, 2 printed name cards, mother of the bride, father of the bride, and nobody sitting there. Claire had spent most of her life telling herself she was used to being overlooked. In the Bennett family, attention had always belonged to her younger sister Madison. Madison was beautiful, charming, ambitious, and somehow good at everything that made other people clap. As a child, she won spelling bees, talent shows, and school elections. As a teenager, she became prom queen, student body president, and the girl every parent in their Tennessee suburb seemed to admire. By college, she was doing local modeling jobs while studying business, and their parents treated every small success like breaking news. Claire's achievements were quieter. She earned a degree in computer science, built a stable career in software, paid her own way, and lived a peaceful, responsible life. But peaceful did not impress her parents. Stable did not give them something shiny to brag about at church lunches, neighborhood cookouts, or family reunions. Her mother, Diane, loved saying things like, "Madison just has that natural discipline," or "You would feel so much better if you put a little more effort into your appearance." Her father, Robert, rarely defended Claire. He simply stayed silent, which often hurt worse. For years, Claire tried to win their approval. She joined activities Diane suggested, dressed the way her mother preferred, and even tried modeling once, mostly because Madison had made it look like the only path to being admired in their family. It went badly, and Madison never let her forget it. Eventually, in her mid-20s, Claire stopped chasing love that always seemed to move farther away. She focused on her career, made her own friends, and learned to keep conversations with her parents polite but shallow. Then she met Daniel Harper at a tech conference in Denver. He was kind, funny in a quiet way, and patient enough to listen when she talked about things most people found boring. He liked her intelligence. He liked her dry humor. He liked her exactly as she was. With Daniel, Claire never felt compared, measured, or corrected. After 4 years together, he proposed at home on a rainy Thursday night with takeout on the coffee table and an old movie playing in the background. It was simple, private, and perfect. For one hopeful hour, Claire believed her parents would be happy for her. When she called to tell them, the silence on the line lasted so long she thought the call had dropped. Finally, Diane said, "You're engaged," not with joy but with disbelief. Robert cleared his throat somewhere in the background. There were no tears, no excited questions, no congratulations. Diane only said, "That seems sudden, doesn't it?" Then, after Claire reminded her they had been together for 4 years, her mother added, "Well, if you're sure, just be careful with the dress. Some styles can be unforgiving in photos." That should have told Claire everything. Wedding planning made it even clearer. Diane had spent years saving ideas for Madison's future wedding, even though Madison was not engaged. She had Pinterest boards, venue opinions, dress preferences, and a whole fantasy built around Madison walking down the aisle in some grand historic estate. But for Claire, she had no interest. When Claire chose a simple A-line gown that made her feel beautiful, Diane called it practical. When Claire asked about venues, her mother said she was too busy. When Claire mentioned flowers, Diane changed the subject to Madison's stressful job. Daniel's family stepped in where Claire's family disappeared. His mother helped with the dress fittings. His sister hosted a warm backyard bridal shower with string lights and lemon cake. His father helped arrange chairs at the garden venue outside Nashville, as if Claire were already his daughter. Nobody said much about Diane and Robert's absence from the planning, but everyone noticed. Claire sent her parents both digital and printed invitations. She checked the delivery confirmation. She texted the wedding website. She called several times when they did not RSVP. Diane always had an excuse. She needed to check the calendar. Robert might have a work obligation. Madison was going through a difficult season, and the family did not want to add stress. Claire did not understand what Madison's stress had to do with Claire's wedding, but she had spent a lifetime learning not to ask questions that would only lead to disappointment. The wedding day itself was beautiful. The sky was clear, the garden was full of soft music, and Daniel cried the moment he saw her. Guests smiled, hugged her, and told her she looked radiant. Claire smiled back because she loved Daniel, because she was grateful, and because if she stopped smiling, she might look at those empty chairs and fall apart. There was no father-daughter dance, no mother adjusting her veil, no proud parents in the front row, just 2 empty seats and the quiet truth Claire did not want to name. After the honeymoon, she finally reached her mother by phone. Diane immediately said they were deeply hurt because they had never received a proper invitation. Claire sat frozen while her mother accused her of excluding them from her own wedding. With shaking hands, Claire opened her laptop and found the email records, the delivery confirmation, and the RSVP reminders. Everything had been sent. Everything had arrived. But Diane kept talking, rewriting the story until Claire's heartbreak became Claire's fault. When the call ended, Daniel found her sitting silently at the kitchen table. He placed a hand on her shoulder and said softly, "They knew." Claire wanted to defend them. Out of habit, she almost did. But this time the excuse would not come. Because Madison was still unmarried, still adored, still the daughter their parents believed deserved every first. And Claire had made the mistake they could not forgive. She had gotten married before the golden child. For a few weeks after the honeymoon, Claire tried to live as if nothing had happened. She went back to work, answered emails, cooked dinner with Daniel, and smiled when his mother called to ask how married life felt. From the outside, everything looked normal. She was a newlywed with a kind husband, a stable job, and a small house filled with wedding gifts still waiting to be unpacked. But every time she passed the framed wedding photo on the hallway table, her eyes moved to the empty space beside her. No mother. No father. No family on her side standing proudly behind her. At first, Claire told herself she could survive it by staying quiet. That was what she had always done. Silence had been her safest habit since childhood. When Diane praised Madison in front of relatives and forgot Claire's accomplishments, Claire smiled. When Robert changed the subject every time Claire tried to talk about being hurt, Claire swallowed the words. When Madison made little jokes about Claire's clothes, career, or body, Claire pretended not to hear. Peace in the Bennett family had always required Claire to be smaller than her own pain. But marriage changed something in her. Daniel did not push her, but his steady kindness made the old excuses harder to believe. One evening, while they were cleaning up after dinner, Claire found herself staring at a stack of thank you cards on the counter. She had written one for every guest who came to the wedding. She had even written one for Daniel's aunt, who mailed them a handmade quilt from Ohio. But there were no cards for her parents because there was nothing to thank them for. Daniel noticed her silence and gently asked, "Do you want to talk about it?" Claire almost said no. Instead, she said, "I think they're lying." Daniel dried his hands on a towel and waited. "They received the invitations," Claire said. "I know they did. The email was opened. The paper invitation was delivered. I checked everything. But Mom acted like I excluded them. She actually made me feel guilty for a second." Daniel leaned against the counter, his expression careful. "That's what they've trained you to do." The sentence landed harder than Claire expected. Trained. It sounded cruel at first, but then she understood. Her family had trained her to doubt herself. They had trained her to apologize first, stay calm, keep secrets, and protect the family image even when she was the one bleeding underneath it. A few days later, the first message came from her cousin Emily. "Hey, I hope this isn't awkward, but your mom said you didn't invite them to the wedding. Is that true?" Claire stared at the message for a long time. Her first instinct was to soften the answer, to say it was a misunderstanding to protect Diane and Robert from looking bad. But then she looked at Daniel, who was sitting beside her on the couch reading a book with his glasses low on his nose. He had spent months watching her hurt herself to defend people who would not even sit in the front row for her. So Claire typed the truth. They were invited. Digital and printed invitations. Both confirmed. They chose not to come. Emily responded almost immediately. "I figured. That story didn't sound right." That one sentence loosened something inside Claire. It was the first time a relative had not automatically accepted her parents' version. The first time someone seemed willing to believe Claire without demanding that she prove her pain in court. Then came another message from an aunt. Then a call from a cousin in Memphis. Then a quiet text from Robert's younger brother, Uncle Martin, who simply wrote, "I'm sorry." I should have noticed more over the years. Claire did not go on a campaign. She did not post anything online. She did not call relatives to complain. But when people asked, she stopped lying to make her parents comfortable. She told them what happened plainly. Her parents received the invitations. They avoided the planning. They skipped the wedding. Then they claimed Claire had excluded them. The truth spread faster than she expected, not because Claire was dramatic, but because the story made sense to people who had watched the Bennett family for years. Many relatives remembered how Diane always pulled attention back to Madison at family events. At Thanksgiving, when Claire once announced a promotion, Diane had interrupted to tell everyone Madison had been invited to a corporate leadership retreat. At Claire's college graduation dinner, Madison had arrived late wearing a designer dress, and somehow the evening became about her modeling schedule. At a cousin's baby shower, Diane had spent 20 minutes showing photos of Madison's new apartment while the mother-to-be sat politely holding a half-opened gift. Claire had believed she was the only one who noticed. She was not. By the time Madison announced her own engagement, the family group chats were already tense. Madison's fiancé Preston came from a wealthy family in Charleston, and Diane was thrilled. Suddenly, the mother, who had been too busy to help Claire, was touring historic estates, booking private bridal appointments, and discussing floral budgets, as if planning a royal wedding. Robert, who had complained that weddings were too expensive, proudly told relatives that Madison deserved a proper celebration. Claire heard most of this secondhand. She had muted the main family group chat months ago, but screenshots still found their way to her. Madison, in a white satin dress, at a luxury boutique. Diane holding champagne beside her. Robert smiling beside Preston's parents at an engagement dinner. The photos did not make Claire jealous the way her parents assumed they would. They made her tired. Then her mother called. Claire almost ignored it, but Daniel squeezed her hand and said, "Only answer if you want to." So she did. Diane did not say hello. She began with accusation. "I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, Claire, but you are hurting this family." Claire sat still at the kitchen table. Diane continued, her voice sharp and controlled. Relatives were asking uncomfortable questions. Some had not RSVP'd to Madison's engagement party. One cousin had said she did not feel right celebrating Madison after what happened at Claire's wedding. According to Diane, all of this was Claire's fault. "You are spreading an ugly story because you can't stand seeing your sister happy," Diane said. "Madison has worked hard for this moment." Claire closed her eyes. There it was again. Madison's moment. Madison's happiness. Madison's future. Even when the conversation was about Claire's wedding, Madison remained the center of gravity. "I'm not spreading anything," Claire said quietly. "I'm answering questions honestly. You're embarrassing us." "No," Claire said, surprising herself with the calmness in her voice. "You embarrassed yourselves when you left those seats empty." For the first time in Claire's memory, her mother had no immediate reply. Then Diane said coldly, "You have always been insecure about your sister. I had hoped marriage would make you more mature, not more bitter." Something inside Claire went still. Not numb, clear. She looked across the table at Daniel, who watched her with quiet support, and she finally understood that her parents were not confused. They were not grieving. They were not misunderstood. They were angry because the version of the family they had sold to everyone was starting to crack. And this time Claire was not going to help them glue it back together. Claire did not sleep much after her mother accused her of ruining Madison's engagement season. She lay awake beside Daniel, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the 2 empty chairs at her wedding and the way her parents had somehow turned their absence into her fault. For most of her life, Claire had survived by staying quiet. If Diane praised Madison and ignored Claire, Claire smiled. If Robert changed the subject when Claire was hurt, Claire swallowed it. If Madison made a cruel joke and called it teasing, Claire pretended not to care. Silence had always been the price of peace in the Bennett family. The next morning, Diane sent 3 messages before breakfast. Madison had been crying. Robert was disappointed. Claire needed to fix what she started before the family was embarrassed any further. Claire read the messages twice, then placed her phone face down on the table. Daniel set a cup of coffee beside her and waited. "I think I need to talk to them one last time," Claire said. Daniel nodded. "Then do it for yourself. Not for them." That evening, Claire called her parents on speakerphone from the living room. Daniel sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his support without him saying a word. Diane answered quickly, and Robert was already on the line. There was no greeting, no warmth, no question about how Claire was doing. "You need to stop this," Diane said. "People are backing out of Madison's engagement party. Your Aunt Linda suddenly has plans. Emily says she feels uncomfortable attending. Even your Uncle Martin is acting strange. Do you understand what you've done?" Claire held the phone tighter. "What I've done," Robert's voice came through low and controlled. "You turned a private family misunderstanding into public embarrassment. Claire almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. It wasn't a misunderstanding. You were invited. The email was opened. The printed invitation was delivered. I called. I texted. You ignored me, skipped my wedding, then told people I excluded you. Diane sighed as if Claire were being difficult. We are not going to argue over details. The issue is that you are punishing Madison because you have always been insecure around her. For once, Claire did not deny it. You're right, she said quietly. The line went silent. Diane's tone changed, almost satisfied. So you admit it. I admit I was jealous, Claire said. Not of Madison's career. Not of her looks. Not of her wedding. I was jealous because you loved her out loud. You celebrated her. You supported her. You made her feel chosen. And I spent my whole life wondering why I had to earn what she was given freely. Robert cut in. That is unfair. No, Claire said, her voice shaking but steady. Unfair was canceling my graduation dinner because Madison got a modeling callback. Unfair was spending more on her prom dress than you spent helping me with college books. Unfair was Mom planning Madison's dream wedding for years while showing no interest in mine. Unfair was Daniel's mother helping me choose a dress because my own mother couldn't be bothered. Diane snapped. You are exaggerating. I'm not. You didn't come to my bridal shower. You didn't help with the venue. You didn't RSVP. You didn't sit in the front row. And after all that, you still expected me to protect your image. There was another pause. This time, Claire could feel them searching for a way to turn the conversation back on her. Robert finally said, if you felt this way, why didn't you say something sooner? Claire closed her eyes. I did. You just never listened. Diane's voice hardened. We gave you a good home, a good education, and every opportunity. But somehow that is not enough because Madison happened to be more successful. That is not our fault. This isn't about Madison being successful, Claire replied. This is about you making her the center of the family and treating me like I was only there to clap for her. Diane scoffed. There it is. Always the victim. Those words should have broken Claire. Years ago they would have. She would have apologized, softened her voice, promised not to upset anyone. But this time the guilt did not come, only clarity. You're right about one thing, Claire said. I was raised by you. You taught me that love could be conditional. You taught me silence, kept the peace. You taught me that I would never matter as much if Madison was in the room. But you also taught me something you didn't mean to teach me. Neither parent spoke. Claire looked at Daniel, then continued. You taught me that I deserve better than this. Robert exhaled sharply. So that's it? Yes, Claire said. That's it. Then she ended the call. For a moment the living room was completely still. Claire expected panic. She expected guilt. Instead, tears slipped down her face, quiet and steady, and beneath them was relief. Daniel pulled her into his arms and she cried against his shoulder, not like a daughter begging to be loved, but like a woman finally putting down a weight she had carried for too long. Later that night, they sat on the back porch while the Tennessee sky faded into darkness. They're never going to change, are they? Claire asked. Daniel squeezed her hand. Maybe not. But you have. Claire looked at her wedding ring, then at the quiet yard in front of her. For the first time, she did not feel like the forgotten daughter waiting to be chosen. She felt free. For 3 quiet days after the call, Claire heard nothing from her parents. No apology, no explanation. No message pretending to check on her. Just silence. But this silence felt different from the kind she had grown up with. Back then, silence meant punishment. It meant Diane was waiting for Claire to come crawling back, soften her words, and restore the peace. This time, Claire did not feel afraid of it. She felt strangely calm. Then Madison stepped in. The message arrived on a Saturday morning while Claire and Daniel were eating pancakes at a small diner near their house. Claire saw her sister's name on the screen and felt the old tightness in her chest. Madison rarely contacted her unless she wanted something, and she never entered a conversation without making sure she stood on higher ground. Claire opened the message. Madison had written it like a corporate memo dressed up as family concern. She said Claire's behavior had been deeply disappointing. She said their parents had sacrificed for both daughters and did not deserve to be humiliated in front of relatives. Then she added that Claire's unresolved insecurities were now threatening one of the most important seasons of Madison's life. Claire read the words once, then again. The message was calm, polished, and cruel in the way only Madison could be. It never directly called Claire jealous, bitter, or unstable, but every sentence was built to make her feel that way. Madison wrote that not every woman needed to turn marriage into a competition. She said Claire's wedding may not have been the celebration Claire imagined, but that did not give her the right to damage Madison's. Then came the line Claire could almost hear in Madison's perfect voice. Some of us have worked very hard to build lives worth celebrating. Claire stared at that sentence for a long moment. Years ago, those words would have destroyed her. She would have questioned herself all day. She would have wondered if maybe she really was jealous. Maybe she really was dramatic. Maybe she really had ruined something beautiful because she could not handle being overlooked. But sitting across from Daniel with morning sunlight coming through the diner window and her wedding ring warm against her finger, Claire felt only exhaustion. She turned the phone around and let Daniel read the message. His face changed slowly, not with anger at first, but disbelief. She actually sent this, Claire nodded. What are you going to say? Claire looked back at the screen. For the first time in her life, she realized she did not have to answer every person who tried to pull her back into the family script. Madison wanted a reaction. She wanted Claire to defend herself, lose control, or say something that could be screenshot and passed around as proof that Claire was unstable. So Claire did the one thing Madison never expected. She blocked her. For the rest of the day, Claire felt lighter. She and Daniel went grocery shopping, watched a movie, and took a long walk through their neighborhood while spring leaves moved softly in the wind. For once, Madison's opinion did not get to own the day. But Madison had never handled being ignored well. That evening, Daniel's phone buzzed while he was brushing sauce over chicken on the grill. He glanced at the screen, frowned, then laughed so suddenly that Claire stepped onto the back porch to see what had happened. "It's your sister," he said. Claire blinked. "Madison texted you." Daniel held up his phone. Madison had somehow found his number, most likely through a relative, and sent him a long message about Claire's emotional state. She introduced herself as someone who cared deeply about the family's well-being. Then she explained that Daniel, as Claire's husband, had a responsibility to help her behave in a more mature and appropriate way. Claire felt heat rise in her face, but Daniel kept reading aloud, unable to hide his amusement. Madison suggested that Claire's sensitivity often made her misunderstand normal family dynamics. She warned that if Claire continued down this path, she could permanently damage relationships that might be valuable in the future. Then came the most revealing part. Madison hinted that maintaining good ties with successful family members could benefit Daniel professionally. Daniel stopped reading and looked at Claire. "She thinks I'm going to manage my wife for networking opportunities." Despite everything, Claire laughed. Not a bitter laugh, a real one. The whole thing was so absurd, so perfectly Madison, that it broke the tension wide open. Daniel typed a short reply while Claire watched. "Thank you for your concern. As Claire's husband, I'm focused on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. Please direct any future concerns to Claire." He showed it to her before sending. Claire nodded. Madison answered within minutes. "I see she has turned you against us too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this blows up." Daniel did not reply again. That night, Claire and Daniel sat on the couch going over the messages. Instead of feeling wounded, Claire felt like she was looking at her sister clearly for the first time. Madison's success had never made her secure. Her beauty, her career, her engagement, her parents' devotion, none of it had been enough. She still needed control. She still needed Claire beneath her. She still needed the family story to make sense, with Madison as the shining daughter and Claire as the difficult one. But this time, the old tricks did not work. Madison had tried to shame Claire directly. When that failed, she tried to reach through Daniel. And instead of dividing them, she only made their marriage feel stronger. Claire rested her head against Daniel's shoulder. "She really thought you'd take her side," she said. Daniel smiled. "She doesn't know what family is supposed to feel like." Claire looked at the blocked number on her phone and felt no urge to undo it. For most of her life, she had believed success meant finally being impressive enough for the Bennetts to love her. Now she understood something better. Real success was peace. Real success was being believed. Real success was having one person beside her who did not need her to shrink so someone else could shine. And by that measure, Claire was finally winning. After Madison failed to get a reaction from Daniel, the Bennett family drama did not explode all at once. It cracked slowly, piece by piece, in the quiet places where Diane and Robert had always cared most: family reputation, social circles, and the polished image they had spent years protecting. Claire heard most of it through relatives, not because she asked, but because people had finally started talking. Aunt Linda canceled on Madison's engagement party first. Then Cousin Emily said she did not feel comfortable celebrating as if nothing had happened. Uncle Martin, who had always avoided conflict quietly, told Robert he would not attend any wedding events unless Claire received an honest apology. That one hurt Diane and Robert more than anything, because Martin had never taken sides before. Diane tried to fix the story the only way she knew how. She called relatives one by one and said Claire had always been sensitive. She claimed Claire had sent the invitations to the wrong address, even though Diane and Robert had lived in the same house for 30 years. She suggested the email must have gone to an old account, even though Robert still used that email for work bills and every family group message. Each explanation sounded weaker than the last. The harder Diane pushed, the worse it became. People remembered things. They remembered Claire's graduation dinner being cut short because Madison had a modeling callback. They remembered Diane turning family holidays into Madison updates. They remembered Robert brushing off Claire's achievements while praising Madison for smaller ones. For years, those moments had seemed uncomfortable but easy to ignore. Now, after the empty seats at Claire's wedding, they looked like proof. Madison's engagement party still happened, but it was not the sparkling event Diane had imagined. The private room at the upscale restaurant in downtown Nashville looked beautiful, with white flowers, gold candles, and a champagne tower near the entrance. But several chairs remained empty. Conversations felt careful. People smiled for photos, then lowered their voices when Diane passed by. Madison looked flawless in a cream dress, but even she could not control the strange tension in the room. Claire did not attend. She spent that evening at home with Daniel, eating pasta on the couch and watching an old movie. At first, she expected to feel guilty. She expected the familiar pull to check her phone, apologize for something, or worry about what everyone was saying. But the guilt never fully arrived. Only peace. Later that night, Emily texted her, "You made the right choice, not coming. Your mom spent half the night trying to explain herself, and every explanation made it worse." Claire read the message, then set the phone down. Daniel glanced over. "You okay?" Claire thought about it. "Yes," she said. And for once she meant it. Over the next week, Diane and Robert became more desperate. Robert called Claire twice, but she did not answer. Diane sent a long message saying Claire was destroying Madison's happiness out of jealousy. Then she sent another one saying family should forgive. Then another colder one saying Claire would regret isolating herself when Daniel eventually got tired of her bitterness. That last message used to have the power to wound her. Now it only confirmed why distance was necessary. Claire did not block her parents immediately. She simply stopped responding. Not because she wanted to punish them, but because she finally understood that every answer became another opening for them to twist the truth. Silence no longer meant surrender. This time silence meant protection. A few days later, Uncle Martin called. Claire almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. His voice was gentle. "I should have said something years ago." Claire looked out the kitchen window at Daniel working in the yard. "You noticed, I think a lot of us noticed," Martin said. "But your parents always made it seem like you were fine with it. And maybe we wanted to believe that because it was easier." Claire did not know what to say. Martin continued, "You deserved better at your wedding. You deserved better before that too." Those words were not a grand apology from the people she had wanted them from most, but they mattered. They proved she had not imagined everything. She had not been dramatic. She had not been bitter. She had been hurt, and people were finally willing to say it out loud. By the time Madison's actual wedding planning began, the perfect Bennett image had lost its shine. The family friend with the luxury bridal boutique suddenly had scheduling conflicts. A cousin who worked with event vendors stopped offering favors. Relatives who once admired Diane's elegant family updates now responded with polite distance. Nothing dramatic enough to call revenge. Just consequences. Claire watched it from far away and felt no joy in their embarrassment. That surprised her. For years, a part of her had imagined that if the truth ever came out, she would feel victorious. Instead, she felt quiet, sad but free. One evening, she and Daniel sat on the back porch as summer settled over the neighborhood. The air smelled like cut grass and rain. Daniel handed her a glass of iced tea and sat beside her. "Do you ever miss them?" he asked softly. Claire looked toward the dark trees. "I miss who I needed them to be." Daniel nodded. "But I don't miss trying to become someone they could love." He reached for her hand. Claire thought about Madison still chasing perfection. She thought about Diane and Robert still trying to control the story. Then she thought about the wedding photo in the hallway, not the empty space, not the missing parents, but Daniel's face as he looked at her. For the first time, that was what she saw first. Her parents had skipped her wedding because the wrong daughter got married first. But in the end, they were the ones who missed everything.